This episode is brought to you by the MJ family of companies. Whatever interests you in the cannabis community can be found at MJ.com. Unique and original content updating you on the latest trends in marijuana legalization, businesses and executives that are disrupting the industry, along with recreational entertainment and the latest deals on the brands and products you love. Visit MJ.com today. Welcome to the Pot.Live Podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G, and I can't believe it. We've already broken through 100 episodes. We want to thank you, the listeners, thousands of you that have sent beautiful comments, beautiful notes to us. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy it. This next year, we're going to bring you the thought leaders, entertainers, trailblazers, CEOs of all the cannabis companies you want to hear from. People that are inventing new products, people that are bringing this cannabis industry to the mainstream. We are going to offer you education, value, and entertainment. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. And we are back on the Pot.Live Podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G, and today we have Mr. Matthew Carr back again for a little summer episode. He is the Chief Trend Strategist of the Oxford Club. You could also find him at profittrends.com. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Len.
Excellent. So let's jump right into the hot button topic, which is the Olympics and cannabis. Sha'Carri Richardson, a sprinter, disqualified for having some cannabis in her system. And now that is being thrown into the political agenda, into the legalization agenda. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, this is like one of those situations that kind of demonstrates, one, how far cannabis has come, and then how far it still has yet to go. Because, she did receive this, 1 month suspension. She won't be participating in the Olympics. You've had a whole bunch of celebrities and personalities speak out. Patrick Mahomes, Darius Butler, Stan Van Gundy, Seth Rogen, Tyler Lockett, all these others. Now, on one side, they, it was a banned substance. Should have been partaking in it even for recreational purposes before the Olympics, that you knew they were testing.
You would think that if you trained your whole life and you knew what substance not to mess with right before your big shot, you would probably stay away from it.
Yeah.
So that on one side, I understand that point of view, but on the other side, like, enough with the cannabis as a banned substance,
Yeah, and you saw it right out the Nevada Athletic Commission. As soon as that happened and she received that suspension, they said, you know what, we are no longer going to test for cannabis.
Yeah.
So there is progress. And I actually think that as things continue to evolve, I don't think, maybe next time the Summer Olympics comes around, this will be something that people are going to be looking at or testing for, because, it really isn't, it's not performance enhancing.
No, I mean, if I was her competitors, I'd want her stoned as much as possible during that race.
Yeah. But like as Seth Rogen said, he's like, Seth Rogen joked that, if cannabis made you faster, he would be in the Olympics, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he'd have the world record, right?
Usain Bolt would have nothing on him.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is, it is unfortunate that we're in this period where things are beginning to change, but you look back at some of these people whose careers are kind of, take stumbles. Sha'Carri Richardson. My friends and I were recently talking about Josh Gordon from the NFL, great wide receiver for the Browns that just, kept having cannabis busts and, ends his career. So it's an interesting spot, but I do think by the next time the Summer Olympics rolls around, this will be something that will be not an issue, or hopefully won't be an issue.
Well, it's so interesting because, obviously the Democrats are pushing for legalization more than Republicans. But then when Biden was asked about this, he's like, well, she knew the rules. She shouldn't have done it. I was shocked that he actually said that. You know what I mean? Where you'd think they'd be more lenient with such situations. But, I guess I could see both. Like I said earlier, I could see both sides of it.
And maybe that's what, you always think maybe that was the thought process. Maybe if she'd, maybe there would be some leniency that things are changing. But again, you did know that this was something that was going to be tested for. Not take that risk.
Right. All right. So let's also do a little review of, obviously every time you've been on, we've been talking about the cannabis industry publicly traded stocks. So we've gone through, we're recording this in July of 2021. So tell us about the first half of the year. What were the trends that we saw? We had that big run up, and then everything kind of came back down to earth in the industry as far as the trading on the stocks and the prices. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen during the first half and where we're at now.
Okay, so in the first half, I think obviously you just hit on that. We had that big run up into February. We hit those highs for the year. That was right after the Democrats took those 2 seats in the Senate down in Georgia. There was all this optimism that there was going to be some progress forward on the legalization front here in the United States. Now, we did have the Safe Banking Act and the MORE Act both be reintroduced to Congress. There was also another bill that was reintroduced to more of, I guess, like a statement bill, which was to legalize all drugs.
Yeah. Well, didn't Oregon, or what state was it? Oregon, that's basically legalized everything. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. They did legal, and you've seen some sort of measures which I think are progressive. Rhode Island legalized places that they would allow if you're going to use drugs, this is a space to do it, so that we can make sure that people aren't going to be ODing or going too far. So you had that going on. All the legislative tailwind that took us up really, really high in February. Since then, shares of the North American Marijuana Index have come down more than 60%. It was kind of like buy the rumor, sell the news, but then the news has kind of taken too long to play out. But I'll also say that this isn't so rare in the cannabis space. Cannabis and let's say something like that's equally as volatile, like cryptocurrencies. We do have these big run-ups and these really steep pullbacks. But on the big front that we saw in the first half, you had the Afria-Tilray merger. That's great. That creates this big behemoth to go up against canopy growth up in Canada.
Are they bigger than canopy now combined?
I not on market cap and sales. They're getting very, very close. Pro forma sales, I guess you could really get very close. A lot of that's going to be also because of those international assets, especially from Tilray. But it is very close 1-2 race there. And then Curaleaf, here in the U.S., the largest multi-state operator, moving its way into Europe. I think that's again a sign of what is going to beginning to change, not just here in the United States, but globally. Europe has a very solid medicinal market. I still think Germany is probably going to be one of the first countries over there to legalize adult use. There's a large medicinal market over there at the moment. So we've had this return of M&A, which we had back a few years ago, where licenses in the United States, the only way that you can really expand at this point is to purchase another company that is holding licenses for dispensaries in states that you want to operate in. So that's where you've actually seen this M&A really begin to pick up, not just here in the United States, but you're also seeing it up in Canada. So that's encouraging. I think that's a very encouraging front for us going forward. So those were the big trends that we saw in the first half of the year. I actually think a lot of that will continue into the second half, especially now with the fact that these share prices have come down so much. And we're seeing some very exciting things from individual companies that, a company like Planet 13, which has a very, sort of Dave and Buster's, I guess.
Yeah, like a superstore experience, right? Crazy experience to go to the actual place. You could spend hours there. Yeah,
the Superstar in Vegas is I've been very open. It's my favorite dispensary in the country because it is. I mean, you can just spend a very long period of time there. They've designed it to be that you can spend a long period of time there. They've designed it so that once consumption lounges in Nevada and Las Vegas were approved, which just recently happened, that you can go there, you can buy your products, you can hang out in the museum, you can get the art museum. You can get food, and you can stay on site and hang out and use the cannabis products that you bought. That's always like the weird thing in these states that we don't really talk about too much, but when they do legalize adult use, recreational use, that you then have these bans on using it in public. Right. So you legalize the use of the product, but then you say, okay, well, you can't use it anywhere except at home. Now, in a city like Vegas, where the majority of your business comes from tourism, that 45 million people on average are coming to this city every single year, that's where your money. You can't use it in a hotel, right? So that's why that consumption lounge move is very big. But Planet 13 expanding its footprint into California, that's huge. You've seen other companies like Columbia Care continuing to expand its footprint, like in New York. So those are all the big trends that we've seen in the first half. And for the rest of the year, I don't think that really changes. I actually think you could see a little bit of speed begin to pick up, especially if we see some headway on these two bills that are in the House or in Congress.
So I don't think you're a trader of stocks. You're more of an investor and a holder of stocks. So is it a little blessing in disguise that we saw the ability of that run up in February and now they came back down? Is it a buying opportunity for the long-term investor right here to just, that cat's out of the bag, it's going to be legal at some point. All these companies are growing. They're not going backwards. Is it a time now to buy? Do you sit and wait and see if there's more of a pullback if things don't happen quickly with the legalization? What are your views there for the average investor?
So I actually do think this is a pretty good buying opportunity here, not only for the trader, but also for the long-term investor. Because I do trade cannabis stocks in some of my services, which are shorter periods, 6 months to a year. And we'll use calls on something like, Grow Generation or Innovative Industrial Properties, those companies that are on major exchanges. But right now we're down more than 60% from that peak back in February. I don't think we're going to those lows that we saw in 2020 when basically, the whole industry and everybody freaked out because COVID hit. COVID hit after the industry was hit by another lung disease, which was EVALI, from the illicit market. So that really hammered all of those cannabis shares to those deep discounts back in January and February of 2020. I don't think we're going back to those levels. But at that time, the North American Marijuana Index was trading right around 63. Today it's at 129. I don't think there's another 50% drop.
Yeah, I mean, even if let's just look at Canopy, because everyone knows that stock. I mean, I remember that stock was in the low teens, maybe 12, 13, 14, and then ran up to in the high 40s, I believe, maybe even 50. And now it's settled in the mid 20s or low 20s. It's still almost 100% increase from where it was last year. So even though it's down a lot after the run up, you'd still be happy with your 80 to 100% gain in a year. You know what I mean? If you just bought it back then and didn't look at the roller coaster ride, just point A to point B. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always recommend that for investors that are in the cannabis space or looking to get into the cannabis space, you want to buy at those lows and kind of have this 5 to 10 year horizon. And so generally that's why I tend to focus for those longer term investors, the bigger names in the industry. The Canopy, Tilray, Curaleaf, Trulieve, Green Thumb, Cresco. I right now, Canopy, Tilray, Innovative Industrial Properties, the cannabis REIT. That's a great one because that pays you a dividend. Grow Generation gives you the access to the entire market through hydroponics. So if it's a little bit more safety there, those all trade on major exchanges. We still have the fact that all the U.S. multi-state operators, all those MSOs, those are still trading OTC over the counter. That means lower liquidity, a little bit more volatility, they'll eventually uplist, and they should be able to uplist before too long, especially if one of these bills in Congress go ahead and gets passed, because that clears the way, that final major restriction on those exchanges, that you can't be involved in a business that is considered illegal at the federal level and then list on.
Yeah. Now, can you explain to the average investor that may not know, when these companies go from OTC to uplist to a major exchange, that allows certain funds and investment vehicles to acquire those shares and put them into their ETF or their fund where they couldn't before. Isn't that correct?
Exactly. One, you're able to, these other funds and institutional investors can pour in, as well as the fact that it brings more, I hate to use this word, but I think it's somewhat apt, legitimacy to shares, right? A lot of investors are told over the years that OTC stocks are super risky. Those are highly speculative. They're trading OTC for some reason or another. Now, I am a huge fan of OTC because that is a market where you can gain advantage, gain exposure not only to cannabis, but to big international companies that don't trade on major exchanges here in the United States. That's, Roche, Adidas, right? Or Adidas.
Yeah.
You want to pronounce it correctly? We're the only country that pronounces it Adidas.
Yeah. That's like Porsche or Porsche, right?
Yeah, exactly. But once companies uplist to a major exchange like the NYSE or NASDAQ, then that brings all this exposure. There's a lot more confidence. A lot more institutional investors can actually begin to buy shares in those stocks. And that actually is much better for those companies in the long run, because one, it increases that beta, decreases that volatility, and better returns.
Yep. So basically, once again, looking at the daily share price will drive you crazy with these stocks. If you're in it for a couple of years, a lot of people are just like to look at the value of their portfolio on a daily basis, and you'll literally drive yourself insane when you have these type of stocks in your portfolio. Just be happy with what you own, and over time, you realize that you're in for the long-term growth. Would you say that's a good piece of advice?
100%. 100%. That if you sit there and watch it day to day, especially in this market where we do have, the Reddit crowd and the Wall Street bets crowd and the social media crowd, which will move stocks up and down, by a very large margin in a single day. Cannabis stocks are a lot less liquid at the moment on that OTC, and that means they are going to move kind of crazy sometimes. And then on top of that, because you have so few that are traded on those major exchanges, that means a lot of investors are overweight in those. There's a lot of investors plowed into those few names, like Canopy, like Tilray, like those Canadian licensed producers, which really don't have a lot of exposure to the U.S. market. They're trying to gain some, but because of TCX regulations, they're somewhat limited, because again, to maintain your listing on a major exchange, you cannot be involved in a business that is deemed illegal at the federal level in another country. So that's why those Canadian companies will be in CBD, things like that here in the United States, but not plant touching.
All right. And so before we finish up, and the question I'm going to probably ask you, I always ask you, but just tell everyone again all the different places they can find you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm everywhere. You can find me. Profittrends.com. That's where our free e-letter. I always recommend the best spot as an introduction to what we do, because we do cover cannabis, but we also cover cryptocurrencies, AI, robotics, fintech, any sort of new and exciting industry we always want to be a part of. You can find me on Profit Trends. Our Market Trends is the name of the program, but it's Profit Trends on YouTube. And then Strategic Trends Investor on Instagram, Profit Trends and Strategic Trends Investor on Twitter, and Matthew S. Carr on Twitter as well.
Damn, you are everywhere. Jeez. All right, before we go, Matthew, I always ask you this. Give everyone who has a few bucks laying around, give them a bigger cap stock that has an attractive share price after the pullback, and give us a little cheapie that's throw a few bucks at and hold on to it.
Okay, well, I'll start with the cheapie because I mentioned it earlier. That's Columbia Care. I actually really, really like this multi-state operator. It's got more than licenses for more than 100 dispensaries at this moment. It's one that flies under the radar. When people think about MSOs in the United States, we think about Curaleaf, number one. That's the biggest. Trulieve, right there at number two. And then it'll be a discussion about Green Thumb and then Cresco. But Columbia Care is right there and it has an exposure to a lot of the East Coast markets. So I really like that one. Shares were trading at 6. They went all the way down into the 4s recently and have bounced back up to about $5. But you're looking at the consensus price target of right around $11.70, I believe is what it is at the moment. And this is a company whose revenue is actually accelerating this year. What you're going to see from a lot of the larger MSOs is, it's not going to be triple-digit growth in 2021 because they saw all that in 2020. Columbia Care is sort of on that lagging edge. This will be the year that it'll start seeing that triple-digit growth.
I actually did a demo of their new software of where basically newbies that aren't that educated on which strain to use can go through a cool little tutorial and figure out what type of mood they want to be in, how they want to feel, and it gets you to a product that they offer that you can try if you're not an expert on the different strains and different types of products, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting company, and I think that's a company that's going to be more of a household name by the end of the year, that people are really going to start paying attention to it. On the larger cap side, I like Canopy, but I will also say Tilray is in this kind of sweet spot to me. You have Canopy right around $22 or so at the moment. Tilray is below 16. That is below that merger price. Yeah, with Rio. So I think that offers a really nice discount at the moment. So it's a larger cap stock, right underneath $16 that I think is a great hold. And if you're looking for something that's a dividend payer, there's only one option there, and that's Innovative Industrial Properties, IIPR.
Excellent. Well, Matthew, as always, appreciate all the insight, all the thoughts, all the tips. Everyone go follow Matthew on the 65 billion platforms he just told you about that he's on. And we'll do it again in a few months. Matthew Carr, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Always a pleasure, Lynn.
All right. And we will see everyone next time on the Pot.Live Podcast. If you are into the recreational side of the cannabis industry, yes, stoners, I'm talking to you, then the Pot.com is the online and mobile destination for you. That's right, THEPOT.com, thepot.com. Where else can you find the exclusive Pot Mate of the Month? Take a pot quiz and win prizes. Scroll through hilarious memes and jokes and check out the latest podcasts, news, and trends, all while having your own profile and voice in the Pot.com forum. Visit thepot.com today and get lit.